into week 3 now. Does the energy stay the same throughout spring, or do you ever hit a kind of a down spot in the spring?
I think a down spot is normal. It's like marriage, right? I mean, at some point, everything gets to be ho-hum. It's funny you brought that up. I mentioned that with the staff. It starts with them. They have to have energy, and then the players should feed off of them. The one advantage you have in the spring is it's not back-to-back days, so they get a day in between, and they get a Sunday and a Monday off, so their bodies come back a little quicker. We should not allow that to happen, but it is a concern, yes. It has not happened yet.
How much does your call?
A guy that when you talk to people that work with Paul Randolph, that's one thing a lot of people bring up with him. Have you seen that from him?
All these guys coach differently. They have to be who they are, and his natural coaching style, from what I've seen, is high energy and talking and moving. And he's my age and has got a unusually high energy level for being 56 years old. But he does coach with a lot of energy.
How much do your older players and your culture prevent the lull from happening? Because when I watch, it's a lot of the older players that are providing the energy, so to speak.
Yeah, so what I asked them to do the first week is I singled some of them out. Ollie, Joe McCoskey, Colin Oliver, Rucker, Corey, Rashad, and had mentioned to them that they need to practice harder than they ever have in their career here, so the young players will follow. And that's really important in culture. And bringing young players along, whether we like it as coaches and teachers, and maybe even parents sometime, they're going to watch their peers and listen to them maybe as much as they do coaches and teachers, and even at times parents. And so I've asked them to do that, and that's a responsibility that they take on. The good news is we've got a large group that has been here a long time, and they do understand that process.
How have you seen some of those older guys that you mentioned settle into more of that mentorship type of role this spring that you mentioned some of them would have?
That's instilled in them during their time here. So I've always used a number of 24 months. It can be 18, it could be 36. Most of the time, 18 to 24 months, it's going to be instilled in them. They're going to form fit into our culture and what we do and what we believe in and who we are, and then it essentially runs itself.
Is that something you can identify in recruiting, whether that's recruiting high schoolers or recruiting transfer guys that in 6, 12, 18 months they develop that kind of leadership capability?
It's one of the more difficult things, but one of the most important is to identify how important is football, what leadership abilities do they have, and the reason for that is because leadership is about leading yourself first before you can lead others, and that makes our job a lot easier, and it makes that a much more smooth transition. And it's not as easy as you would think. The portal is more beneficial in that area because they're older, and I can see what that blueprint is. What did they do at this particular school when they were 19 or 20 years old? Different than a 17-year-old high school player. It's hard to identify really what they can do.
So how do you identify a 16, 17-year-old guy that you're not spending days and weeks with? Like how do you, Mike Gundy, kind of see that this kid can be a leader in 2 or 3 years?
So the ones we recruit, we're going to start out with about 125 high school players, 2.5 years in advance for the most part, rough numbers-wise. And then each one of these guys have a responsibility to do all the background work. And then we'll weed that number down to about 50. And then those 50 will weed us out, and we'll end up with about 20 to sign around 15. And I'm not interested in them bringing a player into our culture that doesn't fit what we believe in. Not because that player's wrong and we're right, but because it won't work. Because we're not going to change who we are based on somebody coming in from the outside. So that's why we put a lot of time and effort into the young men we bring in here. And sometimes the people that love OSU football don't agree with us on that. But that's just a decision we make based on the long-term success and the overall culture of an organization that has 140 players.
Has there been
Staying with recruiting, you had your first official visit weekend. I've talked to a lot of those kids. I mean, the thought coming off the visit by those kids was huge. It looks like you're going to get some commitments out of it. Talk about how your staff and everybody, you've transitioned to the spring recruiting, and you guys seem to hit a lot out of the park this time of year.
It's much different. We're in year, 3 or 4 now,
Yeah.
something like that. And Todd Bradford and his staff have been fantastic. And the other side of recruiting, which is the organizational skills, not just necessarily the evaluation, we have put our mark on that 2.5-day event where these players can see practice, they can see our players, they can see our coaches. We're going to spend a lot of time with them. It gives me a chance, based on what I've learned in the portal, to be really honest and upfront with high school players about what we expect, similar to what we talked about. So we don't have any miscommunication when they do come to Oklahoma State. They need to understand who we are, and we need to understand who they are, and make sure it's going to be a good mix. And so the spring recruiting for us has been very good because we don't have anything to hide. We sell our players, we sell our culture, we sell our people, and we open it up and let them see it. They come spend 3 hours at my house and goof around with all the players and things at the house, and they get to see everything that would be involved in a daily operation for them as prospective student athletes. And then selfishly, I really stress the academic side of it, because I think the academic side is very important, even though it's kind of gone out the window. A lot of people say academics is a non-factor in amateur or college sports. Not at Oklahoma State. It's a big deal because I have sons, 3 of them, and I know that they're going to have some type of academic structure, further education beyond high school in order to get maybe many opportunities. And so we stress that, I stress that, and I think we have success with what we do because we lay it all out there. We don't hide anything at Oklahoma State.
As the spring practice period ends, and for other schools that maybe started earlier, some coaches have talked about, that roster turnover that happens because guys, maybe they're unhappy with their role or for whatever reason they choose to enter the portal. Because this team has so many guys coming back, do you feel that's something y'all don't have to worry about as much, just because this team sort of already made the collective decision, hey, we want to be here, we want to come back?
Yeah, it's interesting the way you phrase that, because we worry about it, but we don't worry about it. It's almost, one of the terms we use in our culture is control what you can control. And I'm not sure what the rhyme or reason is much anymore for why or why not young men go or young women go in portals. Some of it's justified, some of it may not. It doesn't matter. We ultimately have to deal with the hand we've been dealt, which is the end result. So, does it cross my mind? Sure. Do I concern myself with it now? No. I wait till the end of the portal and then deal with the hand that I've been dealt. That's the way we handle it. If I had to predict, I would agree with what you said. We have a lot of maturity and a really good cohesive team right now that's probably not going to want to expand out. That doesn't mean there might not be some of them that just want an opportunity somewhere else. You're dealing with large numbers here. There's 124 of them out here right now. So percentages tell you that could happen to 3 or 4 of them.
Are there a couple positions, depending maybe how the next couple weeks go, that you might want to look to add a guy or two?
I mean, we really have a team. We really have what we need. We have enough now to be successful next year, I'll put it that way. But we will always be prepared. Todd Bradford and his staff has done pre-portal evaluations. So, for lack of a better term, like a free agency list, we know who's out there, and we have to know that now. And if we were to lose guys at a certain position, we'd have to go out and try to bring some in.
You talked last week about Kendall Daniels and maybe seeing giving him some looks at type of a linebacker type of role. Is there a guy that naturally slides into his spot if you end up going with that on a regular basis?
We have quite a few hybrids. Somebody mentioned hybrids a week or two ago. And we have an unusual group of those guys that there's packages that we'll play 3 down and we'll play 4 down, and there's packages we can let Kendall play in the middle, and there's times we can invert him, and there's times if we want to drop him down, we can. We're experimenting with some of that now, and we do have enough flexibility that we don't have to purposely move guys to another position. We have a number of those guys that can fill in that role. Ty is a hybrid guy. Lyric is a hybrid guy. Rucker could be a hybrid guy if we needed him to. So we have some of those guys. Seven's a hybrid guy. We've got enough to have some flexibility without just saying, okay, you got to change positions.
A week into full pads, have any of the freshmen kind of poked their heads out a little bit?
Not really. They're doing very well. It's just so difficult for them, and particularly just the overall physicality and contact of padded practices at this level. I use the example, they should be thinking about prom and graduation, and after they get out at lunch, going to the lake and stuff, and they're out here with us, and it's a different world for them. Armstrong, I will say, is able to hold his own in all the physical side of it, defensively, and then offensively, Ford can hold his own in it. Now, their head's spinning, they might go the wrong direction, but they're further along physically, so they can kind of battle and fight through things that some other high school players wouldn't. And we've had guys that came in that were 2 years away that ended up being All-Americans, and we had guys that came in that did it early in their career and never really pushed through it. So it's not always a telltale sign, but those 2 guys are holding their own from a physical standpoint.
Brendan is going to leave here, one of the most decorated receivers in program history. Was there a time during his recruiting process, just with the size, that you weren't sure that he was going to be able to make it at this level? Because
Sure.
a lot of schools have seemed.
Sure, we had conversations about him and watched him. He would make plays in high school, and he's just not very big. And because I think then he was like 147 pounds or something. He could run full speed under a coffee table and not hit his head. So you're concerned about his overall physical longevity. And then we'd watch him make plays. And then, to be honest with you, he was in the same group with Gunner, so I watched him play live, and I saw him continue to be productive in big moments. And we like guys in high school that can produce, and so we said it's worth taking a shot. And obviously we were right.
Was there a time whenever he got here, whether it be spring practice or fall camp or whatever, that you saw him make a play and you said, okay, he's gonna be fine?
Even his first year here, he was very competitive. And the physical side of it, he'd get bounced around like a ping pong ball, but he would always get back up. And the interesting thing about him is I try to back him off all the time, and I look up and he's back in there. And I'll tell him, Dunn and him, I'll say, you don't need to be in there right now. And then he's back in there. So he just is who he is from a competitive level, and his body's ability to recover from the punishment at this level is pretty amazing. The guy might play the game for 5, 6, 7 more years because he just doesn't know anything other than being productive.
A full 2 weeks has went by now, and a new defensive line coach. What have you we talked to guys last week about the new stuff that they're having to incorporate right now. What have you seen from him?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, he has high energy. I see the players kind of migrating to him and being responsive to his coaching, which is important. So for me, it's important, in my opinion, that the players at a particular position, for like Paul, that when he's coaching them, that he's getting response where they can tune in and listen and learn and absorb information and then be able to show it out here in our team drills. At this point, I see that. The end result is on Saturdays in the fall. whether we like it or not as coaches, we see how well we coached by how the players play on Saturdays in the fall, and that'll be the true story.
What has Kobe Hilton shown you so far in coming in from UTEP?
You can tell he's experienced from his lineup. He's played a lot. He's going to be mature and physical enough. He's fast enough. Now he's learning new terminology, new schemes, new concepts. But he's what we thought when we brought him in here. He gives us that extra experience to help several of the young guys at that position get through another year. Because those guys, as we develop them, they can compete and play sparingly, but hopefully Kobe can carry more of the load.
What about at tight end with Tyler Foster?
He's doing well. I would say very similar. I mean, really very similar to what I just said about Hilton, is the fact that he's got maturity, he's physical, he's learning, but he should provide that bridge between the young guys at that position and his experience, and take those reps to where we bring the young guys along. Very similar.
It seems like the tight end position as a whole has evolved quite a bit since you got here. You know, Brandon Pettigrew back in the day, but Jarwin, and got the Cowboy back in tight end. How do you see that position kind of shaking out this year? How do you see that being integrated to this offense?
So we made the transition a year and a half ago back to what would be a more traditional tight end, and I'm happy with that. And I feel like that it's been good for us. Now we move them a lot, but ultimately they're in what would be a routine concept for offensive football for the last 30 or 40 years, more so than the trend we got into in spread football over the last 10 years. So it's a traditional position for us now that is being used differently, but overall I think it's benefiting who we are scheme and concept wise as an offense.
Do you see Foster as more of a red zone type of guy with his size?
I don't know enough about him yet. I don't know that. I can't answer that fair. But he is long and lanky and should be a factor there. We're going to do some red zone work, and it'll be interesting to see how the matchups, how the safeties and backers feel about covering him.
And Mike, you mentioned taking recruits on business to your house. Rumor is your house is on the market now?
Any buyers, I'll show you.
Discount. Need a discount.
Discount. You want a big discount? Yeah, it's too big of a house for two people. It needs to be for a young family that has a lot of energy and wants to be on a ranch and goof around and have a swimming pool and all that stuff. And that's kind of past my time at this point. So,
is that all your land with on the ranch too, or you
in that particular area? Yes. There's 110 acres. It sets on 110 acres. It's just a lot for two people. I mean, when we moved out there, I think about 13 years ago, so the boys would have been 14, 8. Gage would have been like 5 or 6. Well, times have changed since then, and it's just a big place for two people, so somebody else needs to be able to enjoy it at some point.
What do you miss about the house?
What will I miss?
Yeah.
Well, I have a lot of privacy out there, so I mean, I like that. Like, if I want to get up in the middle of the night and go out in the front yard, take the dogs out, I don't have to worry about who's out there. You can take that wherever you want.
Have you found a new place yet?
You can take that wherever you want. I mean, it's not any secret. You can look at court records. We own land around here in different places at some point. I just haven't got that far. But it's just a big place with a lot of moving parts for two people.